Hello everyone and welcome back. So Creative Assembly revealed Boris Todbringer is going to be a DLC Lord for the Lords of the End Times. And there were a few different comments regarding that. Some were quite hyped that Boris was going to have his day, and others were pretty disappointed considering that Boris Todbringer has actually been in the game since the call of the Beastmen DLC. With a lot of people saying that he should be free, and in some cases I would agree, but it also does make perfect sense to have Boris as a DLC Lord for a number of reasons. But first things first, we do have to talk about the fact that yes, this is a new skin, and admittedly he does look quite cool. Not identical to his tabletop model or the artwork that we have, but then again those have never really been too consistent. But the Boris Todbringer model, the original one that is still available in Warhammer 3, is from Warhammer 1 and has not really aged well. In fact, a lot of textures from Warhammer 1 have either been updated or have fallen behind in terms of quality. So I'm happy that he's going to look a little different at least. Now, this isn't the first time that we've had DLC for characters already available in-game, at least in a Total War-wide spectrum. In Total War 3 Kingdoms, there is a DLC known as Fates Divided, which focuses primarily on Cao Cao and Yuan Shao. And while this DLC did also have extra stuff like, of course, Lu Yong, the main focus was around Cao Cao and Yuan Shao. It's not an identical thing, but essentially, yeah, these characters were available already, and it just kind of expanded upon them, brand new units. It was generally okay received. Mind you, Three Kingdoms was a bit of a weird one when it came to DLC. But I did hypothesize that if Boris wasn't going to be free, this is something that could have happened. Now, I'm not trying to defend Creative Assembly here, like that's not really something that I tend to do, but I do recognize that Boris Todbringer is incredibly important to the End Times because, well, it ends in Middenland. The End Time series of books basically centers around the whole Warhammer Fantasy world, but it ends in Middenland. After one last-ditch effort from a coalition, I probably think is probably the best term, of random characters, because it became rather random as this series pushed up. Yeah, the end happened. Middenland is incredibly important because there is a fount of power which is connected to the coming of chaos. And without having Middenland appear properly, well, then you can't really do the full end times. Once Archeon gets there, the coalition forces fail in their efforts purely because of Manfred, and well, you can't really just blame Manfred. A lot has to do with Teclis for certain parts too, and Gelt being a moron. Yeah, the end of the world happens, the Chaos Gods make themselves manifest, and the world ends. Yeah, literally, fade to black. It's just kind of silly, but it's kind of needed. It looks like they're going to try and heavily push on the narrative because they have spoken about, you know, the devastation mechanic, and there's going to be a lot coming in the end times. So it just kind of makes sense that this is something that they want to do. They'd obviously want to hit the Empire too because the Empire is an incredibly popular faction, so they know that that specific part will sell. It's a very big assumption. I can assume that this DLC will also be split up like the previous DLCs, so you can buy them as a form of a bundle. And a lot of people have been asking for the Cult of Ulrich, or just in general the Armies of Middenland, which was its own separate army list back in 6th edition, which Creative Assembly very much rely on. 6th edition has been a massive boon when it comes to DLC content for specific factions, which is why we've got Changebringers, Eshin Triads, and pretty much just so much. If you go back, you can see elements of 6th edition popping up as much as possible. There's not a lot of unique stuff still missing for the Empire, but the Armies of Middenland, which can be found on screen right now, is a pretty unique army list, and we've already seen some of the stuff confirmed here. You know, the Teutogen Guard, which we'll talk about in a second, and it does seem like Creative Assembly have heavily hinted upon this. Well, not even really hinted, but flat out spoken about it, considering that, yeah, you know, Crush the Weak, which is something known for Ulrichian troops, is going to be affecting everyone. This has been mentioned by the Creative Assembly developers during that live stream. This effectively means that your faction is going to be a lot more worth it when it's focused around melee armies, but I wouldn't worry. I still don't think that there's going to be limitations in terms of range or whatever. It's more the fact of like, this is the theming, right? And yeah, I mean, up to 15%. Well, I don't know if that might change, but up to 50% base weapon damage, armor-piercing weapon damage, and speed. It's pretty good. It's a build-up, so you're going to have to get into combat, but yeah, I like it. There's a ton of Ulrichian units, so I could imagine this being quite useful if you're going to be focusing fully on melee or as much as possible. This all very much depends on what we get in terms of roster, because the roster for the Army of Middenland wasn't too unique, because during the 6th edition stuff it was a lot of kit bash stuff. Well, kind of similar to what's going on now with the Old World, you know? A lot of kit bash based units. It's a fair assumption that a lot of the units coming in with Boris will likely be from this list, but we still don't know the scope and scale with regards to what is going to come. Creative Assembly have confirmed 2 units so far. The Tutogen Guard, which don't take any stats that you see on Gospel. By the time that this DLC comes out, stuff can actually change. But I mean, stat-wise, they look okay and kind of expected. You can see Crush the Weak over there. Expert charge defense, which is kind of expected, and also immune to psychology. This is a great weapon unit using large hammers. I mean, they're not bad overall. They're going to have similar functionality to that of greatswords, but it can be assumed that there's going to be loads of ways to buff them up and make them quite different. Usually the Tutogen Guard was seen more as a defensive unit rather than offensive. And then the Knights Panther, which once again, stats aren't gospel, they don't have any special effects on them. The thing that I've seen a lot about this is, yeah, I know some people are kind of annoyed that it's another Knights unit. I, for one, like the Knights Panther because it's one of those like special loadouts that you could have back in the day, and it's the one that you have now, right, with the Empire's Arcane Journal. Creative Assembly are relying a lot on Knight units. You know, the Knights of the Black Rose prior. There's a lot of knightly orders, and sadly, utility-wise, they're not going to be very different. I wouldn't take this as a confirmation that we're not going to get the Knights of the White Wolf, however, which I think a lot of people would prefer, mostly because if we're getting the Tutogen Guard, we're likely going to get the Knights of the White Wolf. Unless I'm wrong here, but yeah, I feel like the Knights of the White Wolf would be more iconic. It does mean 2 knight units if that's the case, but it could just be that the Empire roster might be quite large. Now, Creative Assembly, to be fun about stuff, did hint about future units, and they did a rumor engine-esque post. So for those who don't follow Warhammer Tabletop, rumor engine is basically where they'll do a little bit of a hint or a teaser of what's to come. Usually they're a little bit better in terms of trying to hide what it is, because I've seen people getting confused about multiple things, hell, myself. But here the community has kind of gone like, oh, I mean, this makes perfect sense, with one of them potentially being hunting hounds, the other basically being our Ulrich, unless it's something completely different, and one which caught me by surprise being maybe the Celestial Hurricaneum. So with that, we'd already know potentially a legendary hero. I doubt that the Arl Ulrich is going to be another lord, considering that, you know, that would be way too many for the Empire, unless they decide to do something and put him like really far away like they've done with Volkmar. But that does give us 4 units. Now, DLCs do vary in terms of units, so there could be quite a decent amount. We saw that with the most recent DLC, Tides of Torment. There were loads and loads of different units, some more than others per faction. But this does make me question what else could come in, because obviously there are some like lords that could be implemented. Maybe the Grand Master, maybe as a generic rather as the Grand Master, the Knights of the White Wolf. Maybe with a dedication feature like Chaos. So you could have like a Grand Master of the Knights Panther, Grand Master of the Knights Wolf, Grand Master of Knights Reichsguard. I don't know, maybe. I doubt it, because that would have to be like really detailed, but it's something that could work unless they do like a High Priest of Ulrich instead, as a form of like, you know, we've got the Archlectors for Sigmar, now we've got something for Ulrich. Hero-wise, there's 2 different options, you know, the Seneschal of the White Wolf or the Priest of Ulrich. So one or the other, or they could do both. This is the thing. I don't think that there's too much value in a Seneschal, considering that it's basically just a belly hero and we have a captain. Although I'll always say that the way that certain lord and hero options have been handled in Warhammer, not just Warhammer 3, just Warhammer in general for Total War, hasn't been the greatest due to lack of customization options. So this does mean it's like, well, is this going to be Warriors of Ulrich or Wolfkin? Again, not really too much interesting stuff. These are just basically state troopers. They could have additional hand weapons, which, I mean, could work, but it very much depends on what interpretation is going on, or if Creative Assembly are either going to do something completely new or go through other source material. It needs to be full enough that it's not just worth it for Boris, but also for the Empire players as a whole, and we do know that there's a lot of Empire players. Now, with the assumption that we will likely end up with our Ulrich and at least one form of Warrior Priest of Ulrich, at least I hope, it's pretty easy to see what we could get in terms of abilities for those heroes, or lords, or who knows what they try to do. It's very hard to kind of keep up with Creative Assembly sometimes. But yeah, Battle Howl is essentially just, you know, a stat buff, giving some charge bonus, maybe even some melee damage, destruction being just an explosion around the target, which kind of makes sense, Winter's Chill being a debuff on the enemy, and then the Fury of Ulrich, which is a remain in play, but we don't really get those here. Granting immune to psychology. It could be done as a passive, but I very much doubt it, because like, that would be kind of strong. I mean, all of that works quite well. That's on the bottom right of the page. I doubt all the other stuff would be added in, unless stuff gets added in a faction style bonus. We'll have to see how that goes. The only thing I found really strange about this announcement was the fact that there's 2 voice actors for Boris. Like, they've got Angori Tom for custom battles only, and I'll play a little clip afterwards, but he sounds really good for what, like, you need, right? In terms of, like, character voiceovers. Like, maybe they've got someone else that they've got, like, more gruff or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, he actually sounds great. And I feel like it's kind of wasted not to have him as a voice on the campaign. Unless whoever they have for campaign just sounds incredible, right? But it just kind of feels like, well, odd.
Beautiful. Boris Todbringer! At pace! None shall live! Oh, I hate Kazrak One-Eye.
But yeah, these are my thoughts. At the end of the day, I kind of expected Boris at this point. Not gonna lie, I did really more expect him as a free character, but it just makes sense. What they need to do is make sure that the value is there. Obviously, if the value isn't there, well, people won't buy it. But in general, like, these are split, and there's usually decent sales going on. I do wonder what's going to happen with the old model. I'm assuming they're just going to flat out remove it. But there's a very fair assumption that mod developers, you know, modders in general, are going to be just backing up the model just in case. I think the reason why he's a DLC Lord is because obviously now Neferata is the FLC Lord. I feel like maybe Boris as a character pack would have been doable, but they need to tie it to the end times. So if that's the only way that they could tie it to the end times, yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see how it is. But it's clear that Creative Assembly can't really bring out the character packs at a decent speed, or else Bashiva would be out by now. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. We got a few more videos to kind of talk about some stuff. So yeah, there's going to be a decent amount. It's nice that we got a lot of Total War to talk about right now. See you everyone. Have a good day. Bye.